In the midst of social distancing and business lockdowns, a freelance writer and a graphic artist bought a bus, converted it into a tiny home on wheels, and moved out of our 4-bedroom house. 1 year later, we downsized to a Chevy Express. Now we travel between Texas and Pennsylvania from April through November while exploring small towns with rich histories. In the winter, we hunker down in Texas in our schoolie and dream of our next big trip.
We're Alan and Teresa.
And we're rolling with our gnomies.
So we're outside of the Strasburg, Virginia Museum. We're about to begin the self-guided walking tour. And so, you can see the railway cars there. Railroad played a very important part in the development of Strasbourg's economy and life from about 1854. We're walking around into the front side of the museum. That's where the walking tour begins. And you can see the entrance right there, but it's closed. It opens in May, runs May 1st to October 1st, and we're here on April 30th. So we're a couple of days early. Anyways, Strasburg, Virginia has an interesting history. It was settled by Germans traveling south from Pennsylvania along the Great Wagon Road. I have no idea.
I got nothing for you.
Somewhere in this area. And it was around 1740. They planned and chartered Strasbourg in 1761. But in contrast to the English on the other side of Blue Ridge, they settled with family farms and built towns and plantations, but they didn't have that many slaves. And they spoke German. And of course, they were religious and very artistic, but they built this area here along the banks of the Shenandoah River with scenic views of the Massanutten Mountain, rolling pastures, and historic battlefields. Later, they nicknamed the town Pot Town.
What?
Pot Town.
Pot? P-O-T?
P-O-T, yeah.
Why? You are awful.
It became the center of fancy earthenware and stoneware pottery, but during the 19th and 20th centuries, because they built pots.
Because they made pots.
They made pots.
I just don't even know what you're recording on that camera over there.
During the 19th and 20th centuries, residents worked for the railroad industry in limestone quarries. After World War II, other industries came to Strasbourg, including paper and auto parts manufacturing. And today, it's largely service industry, museums, eateries, antique stores, and other types of shops. So anyways, great history here. Settled by the Germans coming down from Pennsylvania in the 1740s. And then the railroad industry took off in the mid-1800s, and the town kind of flourished. So we're going to walk the tour. Follow us around. We'll see what happens. Now, across the street from the museum, now that's owned by the Southern States Co-op. It was known as Frogtown during the 20s and 30s, 1920s and 1930s. After a heavy rain, the lot provided an excellent waiting area for neighborhood children. But at Washington Street, it was called Mud Lane. Frogtown occasionally hosted a one-man traveling show using a truck bed as a stage for enacting plays and hawking herb times. So, alright, so this building here was a colonial inn for many years, including during the Civil War, when the Byers sisters served their pies to soldiers marching along Valley Pike. It's said that an exhausted Stonewall Jackson reviewed his troops from a chair on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, his passing soldiers shushing each other when their beloved general fell asleep.
Okay then.
All right. Downtown Strasbourg bustled during the 1930s when many old buildings were either adapted to new commercial uses or demolished to make room for new edifices. The residents at 280 East King Street, right next door, the white building.
Wait.
Hey, we gotta let traffic go by. They get noisy. It was Verna Funk's millinery shop. Her husband's plumbing business, first called Beeler and Funk, then Funk and Crabble, was across the street in the building now occupied by Buggy Bees. So a lot of the buildings
is just amazing.
Yeah, a lot of the buildings have been modernized, but you can still see evidence of their 19th century architecture. And some of the ones, like that one there, obviously is 20th century.
That's not.
Well, the face of it is.
No.
You don't think they built that glass in there, I guess? I don't think they did that too much.
Yeah, that was a store, and they put their goods in that window. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
Maybe they did. But you can see all the 19th century architecture here. It's all been updated. Much of it.
I hear it though.
Desiree Grace Salon, Antiques and Oddities. Hey, that sounds like my kind of place.
Yeah, no. Come on. We're looking at 216.
Yep, right.
That's right there.
Got a war over.
Hold on. They can't hear you.
Outside.
They can't hear you.
War is over if you want it. Imagine peace. Alright. So 216 East King was Brill's Grocery. Originally Little and Larrick's. An example of the small markets that flourished when people walked to shops before the age of the auto. Like that pickup truck right there. Alright.
Now they got a farmer's market in there.
Yep, now they got a farmer's market in there. And Mayfest is the second weekend in May here in Strasbourg. If you're free that weekend, we're not. Oh, look at that. See that side of that building there? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like that.
Look up here at the wall art.
Yep, and we got wall art up there. I love wall art. I think it makes the town look attractive if it's done well. Sometimes it looks. Alright, so we're in front of the fire hall, and across the street is another mural, which you can see if I get it at the right angle. Right there. You can see right behind me over my shoulder, and that's pretty neat. It's got old grandma overlooking overlooking the fellow with the window on his cheek. He's kind of cheeky.
Fathers and Sons.
Fathers and Sons. Oh, what's the name of the art? 1932 to 2018. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I like the art. Fire department building was erected in 1951 in honor of local veterans of all wars. The first firehouse and town office stood here from the 1890s in a modest wood structure known as the sheep shed. That would be perfect for a town office, I think. Hey, look, all the sheep go into the town office. What are they doing in there? They're bad. It was the home of the Massanutten Hose Company No. 1. In 1908, 17 members of Company 1 became the world champion reel racers. Teams contended to win the speed record for connecting hose to hydrant and water to fire. The hose was mounted on a reel, now inside the museum, the Strasbourg Museum, and pulled by hand. The record time was 27.5 seconds. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I probably couldn't do it. Alright, so we're here at a historical marker. The fire department building was erected in 1951 in honor of local veterans of all wars. The first firehouse and town office stood here from the 1890s in a modest wood structure known as the sheep shed. That would be perfect for a town office, I think. Hey, look, all the sheep go into the town office. What are they doing in there? They're bad. They're bad. It was the home of the Massanutten Hose Company No. 1. In 1908, 17 members of Company 1 became the world champion reel racers. Teams contended to win the speed record for connecting hose to hydrant and water to fire. The hose was mounted on a reel, now inside the museum, the Strasbourg Museum, and pulled by hand. The record time was 27.5 seconds. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I probably couldn't do it in 2 minutes.
True that.
The Strand Theater at 177 East King Street, next door to your left, right here in the brick building, I guess, was the first theater in Strasbourg. Then in the 1930s, downtown Strasbourg bustled with activity. There were people everywhere, all up and down the street. Merchants stayed open as late as midnight on Saturdays to serve area farmers. The streets were filled with people, horses, and automobiles. This busy main street had 4 groceries, 2 car dealerships, 2 theaters, 4 service stations, 2 banks, the new post office, 3 jewelry stores, a millinery shop. All women wore hats back in those days. A bowling alley, 2 drugstores, a bus depot, a large department store, a silk manufacturing mill, barber shops, and other retail and manufacturing businesses, and of course, some very fine restaurants. So, there you have it, folks. Everything you wanted to know about Strasbourg. So this row of brick buildings here were constructed with no rear access for coal delivery, so the owners, dentist Cecil Grove and pharmacist Alan Bond, created an alley by moving a wing of a Queen Street house. I'm guessing Queen Street is
Behind them.
okay, that would make sense.
Around the corner, maybe.
During the early 1930s, Dr. Grove moved 4 frame storefront buildings around the northwest corner of King and Holiday to use the lot for the Virginia restaurant. We're walking along Holiday Street here in Strasbourg. And over here to the left is a bank, it's First Bank. In their parking lot, there used to be, the parking lot is now, there was a home. There was a Stover home located where the Stover Funeral Home is now, which is just right up here. Civil War was to the north on the hill in front of us, right where the water tower is. Next to the bank or behind the bank. The interesting thing here is Banks Fort. which was built by the Union forces during the Civil War, was to the north on the hill in front of us, right where the water tower is. After the Civil War, the area was gradually reshaped as new houses and the water tower were built, and the original trench lines were made into streets. A descendant of early settler landowner, storekeeper, potter Adam Keister, E.E. Keister, founded Shenandoah Publishing House, located at 152 North Holiday Street.
It's right here. You're right in front of it.
Right in front of it, right here. So, see the doorway right there. And he combined 4 areas, weekly, bi-weekly newspapers, into the award-winning Northern Virginia Daily. Other Keisters were noted musicians. A Civil War era brass band contained so many family members that it was nicknamed the Keister Band, including famed bugler Cyrus Keister of the 2nd Virginia Cavalry. Alright. So there you go, folks, a famous publisher of the newspaper, one of the big builders of the newspaper industry here in the U.S. It was right here in Strasburg, Virginia. There you have it. A little interesting news about the news. Never know what you're going to learn watching our channel. You never know.
You just don't.
There's the Stover Funeral Home, where the dead people go to live. And here we are at marker number 3. Let's see what it says. All about Banks Fort, folks. Banks Fort. Oh, here's a picture of Adam Keister. Adam Keister Sr. settled and made stoneware, beginning the Strasbourg pottery industry. And in the spring of 1862, Army Captain Edward Hunt, an engineer, constructed a fortification on a hill where the Strasbourg water tower now stands. He selected the hill because it had an effective command over the roads, the railroad, and the town. The Federal Army from this point could guard the junction of the Manassas Gap Railroad and the Valley Turnpike right here at Strasbourg. Union soldiers leveled the hilltop and erected earthworks and artillery emplacements surrounded by trenches. By May 15, 1862, the fort was manned. It was named Banks Fort for General Nathaniel P. Banks, commander of the Union Army here. And then, early in 62, Confederate General Stonewall Jackson's army of about 4,600 had wintered at Winchester. By March, Banks' army began operating in the Shenandoah Valley to prevent a Confederate attack on Washington. Jackson sought to defeat Banks and lure Union forces away from Richmond. After several engagements in March and April, Jackson's outnumbered army marched east as though it was en route to Richmond to deceive Banks. Then it turned around and slipped back into the valley. What a devil. Banks soon learned the truth, but continued to occupy the fort, which Confederate scouts on Signal Knob had observed under construction. Jackson soon surprised the Federals by stealing a march north through the Luray Valley to Front Royal, which he attacked and occupied on May 23rd. When he turned toward Strasburg and the fort, Banks retreated to Winchester, where Jackson defeated him on May 25th. My birthday, folks. Banks then withdrew across the Potomac River, and throughout the rest of the war, Federals and Confederates each briefly occupied Banks forts. Alright, so we're here at just beside Town Run, which is a little stream that runs through town. But we're right beside the log cabin, and this log house was built in 1777. The land was sold by Peter Stover, the town's founder, with the stipulation that a house be built within 1 year. So they built this log house. The rear wing was erected first and used as a tannery. The two-story front came later, and eventually the space between the two structures was boarded in. Notice the neatly dovetailed logs at the building's corners. The property was conveyed to the town of Strasburg in 1940 and deeded to the local chapter of the Sons of Confederate Veterans in 1995. Alright, so we are here at the corner of Fort Street and, what is this? Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah, Washington Street and Fort Street. Fort Street used to be known as Depot Street because the Strasbourg Depot is that one block north up there where the road curves. It kind of snakes around, goes left and then right. A modest passenger station was located right there. A large building at 189 Fort Street to the left. I guess that gray one?
No. It's going to be right over here. No, this one. You can see it sticking out down there.
That was the Chalabete Springs Hotel. Began catering to summer guests in the 1890s. Guests came by rail to the depot. Some were drummers, traveling salesmen, and others came to partake of the spring behind the hotel, believing the iron water to be healthful. Interesting how they call them drummers.
Look, they was drumming up business.
They was drumming up business, drumming up sales, drumming up, drumming up, drumming up. Yep. One block to your left is Capon Street, which leads to Route 55 West, which once was known as Capon Grade. Before air conditioning, people flocked to the cooler mountains during hot summer months. A cemetery there. St. Paul Lutheran Church.
There's Strasburg's first church.
First church. It was a log structure built across the street in the late 1760s. For many years, it was the town's only chapel, so other congregations held services there. In the early years, local laymen, such as Simon Haar, often ministered to the Lutheran congregation. County records show that he performed 368 marriages between 1781 and 1796. He was the schoolmaster for the first school in Strasbourg, and for about 25 years, beginning in the early 1800s, the church employed two ministers at a time. One gave the sermon in German, and the other in English. The log church was replaced by a brick structure in 1844 and dedicated as St. Paul's Lutheran Church. During the Civil War, it was ruined. The pulpit, pews, pipe organ, doors, and windows were all destroyed. By 1864, all that remained was a shell. After the war, the church filed a claim with the federal government for compensation. The Lutheran Synod donated $200 and reconstruction of the sanctuary began in 1867. The church was extensively rebuilt by 1892 and the bell tower completed in 1893. Additions were made in the 20s and the west wing was added in 1954. The latest renovations were made in 86 when the narthex was enlarged and the altar was moved from the north side of the building to the south side. The church cemetery contains graves of many of Strasbourg's prominent families. Adam Feaster Sr., merchant, potter, and elder of the church, is buried there, as is Solomon Bell, another noted pottery maker. And sadly, there are many graves of young children who died before the age of modern medicine. Nice structure.
Wow.
Just needs a little bit of a paint job.
It does.
Looks like it might be an apartment now.
It is apartment.
Alright, so we're going to turn left.
Okay.
So we're standing in front of what is known as the Sonner House. The back wing of the house was built in 1757 by John Sonner. Shenandoah County's first census lists 3 souls and a dwelling here. His son, John, who was judge of the High Court of Appeals, built a 2-story log house beside it in 1820, and the two buildings were joined in 1834. part of the building, now a dining room, once served as a turnpike toll booth. Restoration began in 1980 when weatherboarding was placed to protect the original log structure. Oh, nice.
Looks like it's bed and breakfast now.
Bed and breakfast. Oh, how cool. You have a wood shop back here.
Mm-hmm.
Raised flower beds.
There is a goat on the picnic table.
Yes.
Sure is. Okay.
So one of the things I like about doing these walking tours is you never know what you're going to see. Goats standing on tables, interesting wall art, murals, statues, strange things in small towns.
Like the goat on the picnic table?
Like the goat on the picnic table. But that makes it interesting,
They're in town and they have chickens in their yard. And they have a goat in their yard.
Yep.
In town.
Kind of makes you want to move to Strasbourg, Virginia, doesn't it?
No, it still gets cold here. No. I'm all done with the winters in the north. I've tried this. I went away and did winters in the south. Came back. It's still too cold for me.
Yes. We're almost into May, and it's still in the 30s at night.
I still got a sweater on during the morning.
Yeah, it's still in the 30s at night. It'll be in the 60s later today, this afternoon. But for right now, it's cool in the evenings and cool in the mornings.
I like the cool evenings, and I'm okay with the cooler mornings, but I really think it needs to not be freezing at night anymore.
That's the way it is. So here we are.
Alright, if I don't do this right, then I'm going to be on the bad side of my wife. So y'all bear with me and pray for me. But while you're doing that, don't forget, share us with your friends. Like us if you like us. Like us if you don't. Subscribe to the channel. It helps us out. God bless.